Close your eyes. Imagine standing in a bustling city street, surrounded by the echoes of everyday life. Children laughing in the distance, cars honking, street vendors calling out their wares. Yet there is something peculiar about the air, a dissonance, a silent tension lingering just beneath the surface. Now picture yourself holding a stack of banknotes, not a few, but thousands, bundled together with fraying rubber bands, their edges worn from overuse. These bills, once symbols of economic power, are now weighty bundles of dashed hopes. You are about to step into a supermarket, not with a cart full of groceries, but with a single item on your list, a loaf of bread. A basic necessity, yet its price is counted not in bills, but in kilos. This isn't a scene from a distant past, nor a dystopian novel. This is present-day Venezuela, a country that once sat atop a treasure trove of black gold. The Orinoco Belt, with its 300 billion barrels of oil, promised prosperity and abundance. Yet the reality has become something else entirely. By 2018, hyperinflation had spiraled beyond 1,000,000%, turning the bolivar into little more than paper scraps. Banknotes were tossed aside, fluttering through the streets like leaves in the wind. Children, innocent to the harshness of economic ruin, folded them into paper planes, their carefree play a stark contrast to the grim reality faced by their parents. How did it come to this? How did a nation with such wealth beneath its soil collapse into such deep economic despair? The answer lies in a complex tapestry of political choices, global economic shifts, and the inexorable tides of history. In 1999, Hugo Chavez rose to power, buoyed by promises of social reform and equality. His policies of nationalization and wealth redistribution initially brought hope to many, yet they also sowed the seeds of institutional decay. As oil prices plummeted from over $100 per barrel to less than $50 in 2014, a government budget dependent on oil revenues began to unravel. The government's response was one of desperation, printing money at unprecedented rates in a futile attempt to bridge the widening gap. What followed was a cascade of economic calamities. As inflation soared into the hundreds and eventually millions, access to basic goods became a daily struggle. Food shortages, medicine scarcity, and an ever-present specter of hunger cast long shadows over everyday life. Yet, amidst the chaos, a parallel economy began to take shape. Enter Bitcoin, a digital phoenix rising from the ashes of traditional currency. For some Venezuelans, it offered a glimmer of hope, a currency immune to government manipulation and hyperinflation. Free from the suffocating grip of state control, Bitcoin became a lifeline. Families turned to this digital currency to preserve their wealth, to buy food, to survive in a world where the old rules no longer applied. The decentralized nature of cryptocurrency was both a blessing and a challenge. For every obstacle it overcame, it presented new questions and risks. The Venezuelan government, aware yet wary of losing its remaining hold over the economy, attempted to regulate and control this new form of currency. But control is a slippery thing in the digital age, and so the Venezuelan people found themselves at a crossroads, navigating a landscape where they were forced to become their own central banks. This is a story not just of economic survival, but of resilience, ingenuity, and the human spirit's unyielding will to adapt. As we delve into the unfolding story of Venezuela's hyperinflation and the rise of Bitcoin, let us explore the lives of those who lived it, who fought against odds, and who continue to forge a path in uncertain times. Because this is not merely a tale of economic numbers and digital currency. It is a deeply human story, one that invites us to look closer, listen deeper, and understand more fully the profound impact of an economy in crisis. As we begin this journey, let us step together into the heart of a narrative that is still unfolding, still resonant with echoes of hardship and hope. Chapter 1 awaits. Chapter 1 awaits. The country that had everything. Venezuela, rich in natural resources, was once the crown jewel of Latin America. The year was 1922, when oil was discovered in the Maracaibo Basin, changing the nation's destiny forever. By the 1950s, Venezuela became one of the world's largest oil exporters, its economy thriving as roads and skyscrapers rose from the wealth of black gold. By 1976, Venezuela had nationalized its oil industry, establishing Petróleos de Venezuela, S.A., known simply as PDVSA. This move was intended to consolidate the country's wealth under government control, a strategy that would later bear significant consequences. In the capital, Caracas, optimism was a common currency, where modernism met traditional charm. The Orinoco Belt, holding an estimated 300 billion barrels of oil, was the undeniable backbone of the economy. Yet, beneath the surface of prosperity, cracks began to form. In 1998, Hugo Chavez, a charismatic former military officer, emerged onto the political scene with promises to uplift the poor and redistribute wealth. Chavez ushered in a new era on February 2, 1999, as he took office. His Bolivarian revolution, inspired by Simón Bolívar, sought to reshape Venezuelan society. Social programs flourished, and initially, living conditions improved. Schools and clinics appeared in neighborhoods long neglected. The oil boom of the early 2000s supported these ambitious social policies, as prices soared past $100 per barrel. For Chavez, this oil wealth was both a blessing and a tool. He wielded it to consolidate power, securing his government's hold over key industries. By 2002, Chavez had survived a coup attempt, further strengthening his resolve to push forward his vision for Venezuela. His policies extended to land reforms and nationalizations, affecting sectors beyond oil, telecommunications, agriculture, and more. However, these changes came at a cost. By weakening private enterprises and stifling innovation, Chavez set the stage for a fragile economy, overly reliant on oil. This dependence would soon prove precarious. In 2013, Chavez passed away, leaving behind a transformed yet vulnerable nation. Nicolás Maduro, Chávez's hand-picked successor, assumed power in April 2013. He inherited an economy that was beginning to show signs of strain. When oil prices plummeted in 2014, falling from over $100 per barrel to under $50, the impact on Venezuela was catastrophic. Oil revenues, which accounted for 95% of the government budget, dried up. Facing dwindling coffers, the government resorted to printing money to meet its obligations, sowing the seeds of hyperinflation. By 2016, inflation skyrocketed, reaching hundreds of percent per year. The Bolivar, Venezuela's national currency, began its rapid descent into worthlessness. Amid this economic turmoil, the people of Venezuela faced mounting hardships. Grocery store shelves emptied, and basic necessities became scarce. The grand dreams of the Bolivarian Revolution seemed a distant memory, replaced by the daily struggle to survive. For families like the Hernandezes of Maracaibo, daily life became an endurance test. Maria Hernandez, a nurse, recalled the deterioration of hospitals where basic supplies vanished seemingly overnight. Her husband Pedro, once a foreman in the oil fields, was left jobless as operations slowed. In the bustling streets of Caracas, a sense of desperation permeated the air. Long lines formed at banks where citizens sought to withdraw their dwindling savings, only to find themselves restricted by government-imposed limits. Crime surged, driven by the desperation of those pushed to their limits. Yet even as the crisis deepened, whispers of an alternative began to circulate. In the shadows of Venezuela's economic collapse, some saw a glimmer of hope in the form of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, a decentralized currency, emerged as a potential lifeline for those seeking to preserve their wealth beyond the reach of inflation's ravages. Carlos Castillo, a young technology enthusiast from Valencia, was among the first to realize Bitcoin's potential. He discovered that through mining and trading cryptocurrency, he could earn income untethered from Venezuela's volatile economy. As Bitcoin usage spread, communities formed, sharing knowledge and resources to navigate this digital frontier. In the town of El Tigre, Luis, a former shopkeeper, transformed his store into a cryptocurrency hub. Here, locals exchanged stories and strategies, learning to trade and utilize Bitcoin in a world where traditional currency faltered. This growing adoption of Bitcoin marked a significant shift, as ordinary Venezuelans began to carve out a parallel economy amidst the chaos. The stark contrast between the official exchange rates and the black market rates illuminated the deepening chasm in the nation's financial landscape. For many, the adoption of Bitcoin was not just about financial survival. It symbolized resistance against a government that had failed to safeguard their future. As they navigated this new terrain, Venezuelans demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and a relentless pursuit of hope. In the face of an uncertain tomorrow, they forged a community bound by shared hardships and aspirations. The story of Venezuela, once a beacon of prosperity, now hinged on the choices of its people, their spirit undeterred by adversity. As we continue this journey, we'll explore the collapse that followed the oil price plunge, the government's responses, and the unfolding narrative of hyperinflation's human toll. Chapter 2 beckons, offering more insight into the economic unraveling that set the stage for an era of challenges and change. Chapter 2 beckons, offering more insight into the economic unraveling that set the stage for an era of challenges and change. As we turn back the pages to 2014, Venezuela found itself on the precipice of a profound transformation. Oil prices, which had once soared above $100 per barrel, began a precipitous decline, plummeting to under $50. This was not merely a dip. It was a sharp, unforgiving descent that struck at the very heart of Venezuela's economic lifeline. Oil revenues accounted for approximately 95% of the government's budget. The sudden drop in oil prices was not just an economic event, it was a national crisis. Hugo Chávez's legacy, built upon the wealth of the oil reserves, was now a precarious structure. Nicolás Maduro, who succeeded Chávez in 2013, faced a reality that was rapidly unraveling. The Orinoco Belt, once a beacon of endless potential with its estimated 300 billion barrels of oil, seemed to hold little solace against the immediate challenges. The government, desperate to maintain social programs and political stability, turned to currency controls. These measures, aimed at preserving foreign reserves, instead sowed the seeds of economic distortion. Black markets thrived as official exchange rates became detached from reality. Inflation, which had been a creeping concern, began to accelerate with alarming speed. By 2016, it had reached hundreds of percent annually. The bolivar, Venezuela's currency, started its descent into worthlessness. Stories emerged of families resorting to barter, trading goods in a system that seemed medieval in its simplicity. Luis and Marta, a couple living in Caracas, embodied the struggle of many Venezuelans. They had once been part of the burgeoning middle class, benefiting from the oil boom years. Luis worked as an engineer in the oil industry, while Marta managed a small bakery. By 2016, their savings dwindled each day, seemingly evaporating in the heat of hyperinflation. Milk, once a staple, became a luxury. The government's response to print more money only fueled the fire. The more bolivars that flooded the market, the less they could buy. By 2018, inflation exceeded the unfathomable mark of 1,000,000% per year. The world's eyes turned to Venezuela, watching as the country spiraled into economic chaos. Newspapers around the globe covered the story, but for Venezuelans, it was a daily reality that required resilience and ingenuity to navigate. In this environment of economic uncertainty, whispers of an alternative began to surface. Bitcoin, a digital currency born out of the 2008 financial crisis, started gaining attention. For Luis and Marta, Bitcoin initially seemed like a foreign concept, something from a distant digital world that had little to do with their immediate survival. Yet, As the Bolivar continued its freefall, Bitcoin emerged as a lifeline for some. The appeal of Bitcoin lay in its decentralization. No government could manipulate its value as they had with the Bolivar. It was a currency governed by mathematics, not politics. For many Venezuelans, this was its most attractive feature. In a land where trust in institutions had eroded, Bitcoin offered a semblance of stability. By the time Luis and Marta first learned about Bitcoin in 2017, the digital currency had already begun to infiltrate the Venezuelan economy. Tech-savvy individuals saw it not just as a hedge against inflation, but as a means to participate in the global economy. For others, it was a chance to preserve whatever wealth they had left. Online forums and social media became hubs of information exchange, where people shared tips and success stories. The story of Andres, a young software developer from Maracaibo, paints a vivid picture of this shift. Andres had always been fascinated by technology. When he first mined Bitcoin in 2015, it was more of a hobby than a financial strategy. However, as the Bolivar crumbled, Bitcoin became his primary means of saving. He started using it for transactions, bypassing the hyperinflated Bolivar altogether. By the end of 2018, Andres had not only preserved his savings, but also managed to help his family. He taught them how to use Bitcoin wallets, how to convert funds when necessary, and how to stay safe from scams. In a country where food and medicine were scarce, Bitcoin allowed Andres to purchase necessities online, providing a lifeline in an otherwise dire situation. For some, Bitcoin wasn't just an economic tool. It was a symbol of empowerment. It represented a way to assert control over one's financial destiny amidst a backdrop of chaos. Yet the transition wasn't seamless. The Venezuelan government, aware of the growing interest in cryptocurrency, viewed it with suspicion. Bitcoin, after all, represented a form of capital flight, an evasion of their currency controls. This growing tension set the stage for a complex dance between state power and individual autonomy. The government attempted to regulate Bitcoin, introducing their cryptocurrency, the Petro, in 2018. However, skepticism ran high. The Petro, pegged to the country's oil reserves, was seen by many as an extension of the existing economic problems rather than a solution. Meanwhile, for Luis and Marta, the journey into Bitcoin was fraught with challenges. They faced technical hurdles, fears of volatility, and the ever-present risk of cyber theft. But as the Christmas of 2018 approached, they found themselves relying more on this digital currency. It allowed them to send money to relatives abroad and receive remittances without the exorbitant fees that had become the norm with traditional banks. In their small apartment, the glow of a laptop screen often illuminated late-night discussions of trade-offs and risks. Bitcoin was not a panacea, but in a collapsing economy, it offered a glimmer of hope. As the new year dawned, the question lingered: how would this digital revolution continue to unfold? With each transaction, with each cautious step into the world of cryptocurrency, the resilience of the Venezuelan people shone through. Their story, a testament to adaptability in the face of adversity, was far from over. As we prepare to delve deeper into their journey, we pause, knowing that this chapter is but a bridge to the next. And so the tale continues, as we explore the emergence of a parallel economy and the complexities of navigating a world reshaped by financial collapse and innovation. And so the tale continues, as we explore the emergence of a parallel economy and the complexities of navigating a world reshaped by financial collapse and innovation. The year was 2016, and Venezuela's official economy was in freefall. Hyperinflation had gripped the nation, rendering the bolivar almost worthless. As the government's currency controls tightened, on the streets of Caracas, a different kind of marketplace was emerging. A black market economy flourished, driven by necessity and desperation. People like Maria Fernandez found themselves at the heart of this underground world. Maria, once a schoolteacher, had turned to bartering as a means of survival. Her story, like many others, paints a vivid picture of resilience and resourcefulness. She traded whatever she could, old clothes, canned goods, even her children's toys, for essentials like rice and cooking oil. In this parallel economy, official exchange rates held little meaning. The government insisted on a fixed rate, but on the black market, the true value of the bolivar was starkly different. By early 2017, a single US dollar fetched thousands of bolivars, and people were willing to pay even more for the stability it promised. This disparity fueled a sense of injustice and unease. The impacts of this economic chaos were felt in every aspect of life. Basic necessities became luxury items overnight. In the city of Maracaibo, Pedro Ramirez, a former engineer, described his daily struggles. Standing in line for hours just to buy bread had become routine. Pedro recounted a day in May 2017 when he waited 8 hours only to find the shelves empty upon reaching the front. Such experiences were common, as demand vastly outstripped supply. The government's attempts to control prices only exacerbated shortages. Price caps encouraged hoarding and discouraged production, further crippling the economy. In towns like San Cristobal, closer to the Colombian border, cross-border trade thrived as a lifeline. People smuggled goods like food and medicine from Colombia, trading them for bolivars or foreign currency. This informal economy was a complex web of transactions, fueled by both necessity and opportunity. Here, the value of the bolivar was even lower, reflecting the realities of supply and demand. Crossing the border was perilous, with smugglers risking arrest and violence. Yet for many, it was the only way to feed their families. Amid this turbulence, the social fabric of Venezuela began to fray. Communities that had once thrived on cooperation found themselves competing for scarce resources. Old social networks were tested, and new alliances formed in unexpected ways. For Maria and her neighbors, mutual aid became a survival strategy. They pooled resources to buy in bulk or share what little they had. Such acts of solidarity offered a glimmer of hope in otherwise dark times. Yet these efforts were not enough to stem the tide of despair. The emotional toll of hyperinflation was profound. Fear and uncertainty became constant companions for families like the Garcias in Valencia. Carmen Garcia, a mother of 3, spoke of the anxiety that shadowed her every decision. Every trip to the market was fraught with worry about whether she could afford even the basics. Inflation was like a monster, devouring savings and dreams alike. The Garcias, like many others, watched helplessly as their life savings dwindled to nothing. Within this chaos, whispers of an alternative began to circulate: Bitcoin. In 2018, tech-savvy Venezuelans turned to this digital currency as a means of regaining financial control. Bitcoin, immune to government manipulation, offered a semblance of stability amidst the storm. For entrepreneurs like Luis Perez, it was a revelation. Luis, a former IT consultant, began mining Bitcoin in his garage, using his technical skills to navigate this new frontier. He saw Bitcoin not just as a currency, but as a way to preserve his family's future. Transactions that were once impossible became feasible, connecting people beyond the borders of a collapsing state. The rise of Bitcoin marked the beginning of a digital revolution, a lifeline for those who dared to embrace it. However, it was not without challenges. Electricity shortages and government crackdowns on cryptocurrency posed significant hurdles. Yet for many, the promise of financial autonomy was worth the risk. Communities began to form around this new technology, sharing knowledge and resources. These digital pioneers were rewriting the rules of engagement in a nation where paper money had lost its value. As we conclude this chapter, the story of a parallel economy pushing against the boundaries of a crumbling system unfolds. It is a tale of hardship, innovation, and the indomitable human spirit, striving to forge a path through adversity. Yet, it is also a story of uncertainty. For each step forward, there are new challenges to confront, new questions to answer. In our next chapter, we will delve deeper into the human toll of hyperinflation. We will explore the stark realities faced by those left behind, where food shortages and the lack of basic medical supplies paint a harrowing picture. Through the eyes of individuals living in this shadow, we will gain a deeper understanding of the weight of survival. The story continues. The story continues as we step into the depths of hyperinflation's human toll. In Venezuela, by 2016, the inflation rate surged into the hundreds of percent per year. By 2018, the staggering reality of inflation exceeding 1 million% took hold. This chapter is not about abstract numbers or economic theories. It's about real people, like Maria, a mother of 3 in Maracaibo. Maria once ran a small bakery on Avenida 5 de Julio. Flour, eggs, and sugar, once plentiful, became luxuries. She watched helplessly as her bolivars lost value faster than she could spend them. Maria's story is echoed by thousands across the nation. Caracas, the capital, was no different. The bustling markets turned into venues of desperation. Shelves, increasingly bare, mocked the eager eyes of those hoping for essentials like rice or pasta. Basic medicines vanished, leaving pharmacies empty shells of their former selves. In this environment, ordinary citizens bore the brunt of economic mismanagement. People like Juan Carlos, a teacher in Barquisimeto, felt the pinch. His salary, once enough to support his family, became a meager allowance that couldn't cover a week's worth of groceries. The visible effects of malnutrition were shocking. Reports indicated that by 2017, Venezuelans lost an average of 11 kilograms due to food scarcity. Images of emaciated children and long queues at food distribution centers painted a stark picture. Even the hospitals, once places of healing, became centers of despair. Shortages of basic medical supplies, from antibiotics to bandages, turned minor ailments into potential death sentences. The human suffering was palpable, as doctors and nurses struggled with limited resources. In the face of such adversity, resilience began to surface. Communities banded together, forming makeshift networks to support each other. Sharing became a survival tactic, as neighbors exchanged goods and services in lieu of cash. It was amid this chaos that alternative solutions began to emerge. The idea of Bitcoin, once a distant and abstract concept, started to gain traction. Venezuelans needed a currency that held value, something immune to governmental tampering. Bitcoin offered a ray of hope. As a decentralized digital currency, it provided a way to navigate the economic turmoil. People like Ricardo, a young computer engineer, saw the potential. He began mining Bitcoin from his tiny apartment in Valencia. The initial investment was steep. He pooled his resources to purchase the necessary hardware, seeing it as a lifeline. Over time, Ricardo was able to trade Bitcoin for essentials, bypassing the hyperinflated bolivar. Others, like Ana and Merida, used Bitcoin to receive remittances from family abroad. Traditional money transfers were unreliable and expensive. With Bitcoin, she could convert digital currency into tangible goods more efficiently. These stories reflect a broader trend. By 2018, it was estimated that nearly 40% of Bitcoin transactions in Latin America originated in Venezuela. The digital currency became a tool for survival, a way to preserve wealth and maintain dignity in the face of collapse. However, the transition to this new form of currency was not without its challenges. Technical barriers and limited internet access posed significant hurdles. In rural areas, where connectivity was sparse, people struggled to engage with this digital economy. Yet, innovation flourished. Entrepreneurs and tech-savvy individuals began setting up internet hubs and offering workshops on cryptocurrency usage. The spirit of adaptation was alive and thriving. As Bitcoin gained momentum, the Venezuelan government took notice. Nicolás Maduro's administration, already grappling with international sanctions and economic isolation, viewed cryptocurrency with suspicion. In response, the government launched its own digital currency, the petro, in 2018. Backed by the country's vast oil reserves, it was touted as a solution to circumvent sanctions and stabilize the economy. The petro, however, met with skepticism. Critics questioned its legitimacy and transparency. Many saw it as another tool for government control rather than a genuine attempt to resolve the crisis. Despite these efforts, Bitcoin continued to thrive among ordinary citizens. It represented a form of autonomy, a means to regain control over their financial lives amidst the chaos. This turning point in Venezuela's economic saga highlights the resilience and ingenuity of its people. In the face of unprecedented hardship, they found ways to adapt and survive. The adoption of Bitcoin, though not a panacea, offered a glimpse of hope. As we prepare to explore the next chapter, we ponder the broader implications of this shift. The Venezuelan experience raises questions about the future of currency and the role of technology in shaping economic landscapes. Reflect on the individuals who, against all odds, became their own financial guardians. Their stories resonate with a fundamental truth. In times of crisis, the human spirit seeks freedom and self-determination. The narrative of Venezuela's economic turmoil is far from over. In the chapters to come, we will delve deeper into the government's response and the ongoing struggle between control and autonomy in the realm of cryptocurrency. As we turn the page, let us carry with us the lessons of resilience and innovation. The journey through Venezuela's economic landscape is a testament to the power of adaptation and the enduring quest for hope. Join us as we continue to unravel the complex web of hyperinflation, survival, and the emergence of a new financial paradigm. The story of Venezuela is a story of transformation, one that challenges us to rethink the very nature of money and the human capacity to endure. The story of Venezuela is a story of transformation, one that challenges us to rethink the very nature of money and the human capacity to endure. As we journey into Chapter 5, titled Bitcoin, A New Hope, we find ourselves at a crossroads where desperation meets innovation. For years, the Venezuelan people had borne the brunt of hyperinflation. In 2018, the situation reached its zenith as inflation soared beyond 1,000,000%. The bolivar, once a symbol of national pride, became akin to monopoly money, practically worthless for any substantial transaction. In this landscape of economic ruin, the discovery of Bitcoin offered a lifeline, a digital beacon in a sea of paper currency despair. Bitcoin, created in 2009 by the enigmatic figure known only as Satoshi Nakamoto, served as a decentralized digital currency. It was immune to government manipulation and inflationary pressures. For Venezuelans, Bitcoin symbolized not just an alternative currency, but a radical shift in power. It represented autonomy, a chance to regain some control over their finances, free from the chaotic grasp of their crumbling monetary system. Many Venezuelans, like Luis Garcia, a former IT technician from Caracas, turned to Bitcoin out of necessity. By 2017, Luis had lost his job due to company closures and was struggling to make ends meet with the rapidly devaluing bolivar. The internet, once a catalyst for his career, now became a portal to survival. Luis started mining Bitcoin, running complex computer algorithms to verify digital transactions and earn cryptocurrency as a reward. Despite the erratic electricity supply, he knew that each Bitcoin mined brought him a step closer to financial salvation. The allure of Bitcoin also reached Maria Fernandez, a young university student studying economics at the Central University of Venezuela. Maria saw the digital currency not just as a means to pay for groceries or tuition, but as a subject worthy of study. She formed a small group with fellow students, diving deep into the mechanics of cryptocurrency, understanding blockchain technology, and envisioning a future where they might build careers in this burgeoning field. For Maria, Bitcoin wasn't just a currency, It was a new lens to view economics in a world where traditional systems had failed them. The rise of Bitcoin in Venezuela was not without challenges. Internet connectivity was unreliable, and many people lacked the knowledge or resources to access this new form of currency. Yet a grassroots movement emerged, driven by necessity and the human instinct to adapt. Community meetups began popping up in cities like Maracaibo and Valencia. These gatherings offered a space for education, support, and the exchange of ideas, an informal school for the currency of the future. The Venezuelan government, led by Nicolás Maduro, watched this Bitcoin revolution with suspicion and concern. To them, cryptocurrency was a threat to their already tenuous hold on the economy. In 2018, Maduro launched the Petro, a state-sponsored cryptocurrency backed by the country's oil reserves, an attempt to co-opt the crypto craze and reassert control. Despite government promotion, the Petro struggled to gain trust and traction, both domestically and internationally. For those like Luis and Maria, the Petro was seen as just another iteration of the state's failed economic policies. Instead, they and countless others continued to rely on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a means of preserving wealth and conducting transactions in an economy that was otherwise unmanageable. Bitcoin also found its place in the Venezuelan diaspora. More than 5 million Venezuelans had fled their homeland by 2019, seeking refuge in neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil. For many of these migrants, Bitcoin became a bridge, allowing them to send remittances back home without the high fees charged by traditional financial institutions. In cities like Cucuta, on the Colombian-Venezuelan border, Bitcoin was often used in informal currency exchanges. Here, the digital and physical worlds collided as people exchanged Bitcoin for bolivars or Colombian pesos, facilitating the flow of goods and money between families separated by borders. Bitcoin also provided a measure of resilience and hope in the face of adversity. Stories emerged of Venezuelans using their newfound crypto skills to embark on new ventures. Take the example of Javier Ortega, who founded a startup focused on providing blockchain-based solutions to other Latin American countries facing similar economic challenges. Javier's vision was to transform the lessons learned in Venezuela into tools that could empower others across the continent. While Bitcoin offered a glimmer of hope, it was not a panacea. The digital currency's volatility and the complexities of its ecosystem posed ongoing challenges. Yet for many Venezuelans, the risks were worth the potential rewards. In a country where saving in the national currency seemed futile, Bitcoin became a digital vault, securing their efforts against an uncertain future. As we close this chapter, we are reminded of the profound resilience of the human spirit. In the face of unimaginable economic hardship, Venezuelans found a way to adapt, to innovate, and to fight for a semblance of control over their financial destinies. The story of Bitcoin in Venezuela is not just about technology. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the innate drive to survive against all odds. Chapter 5 leaves us at a pivotal moment, a time of transition where the tools of the digital age intersect with the very fabric of a society in turmoil. As we move forward, the questions remain. Can this new currency of hope sustain itself in the long run? Will the Venezuelan government find a way to coexist with a decentralized system, or will new conflicts arise? In the next chapter, Becoming Their Own Central Bank, we will delve deeper into the lives of those who have taken the bold step to embrace this new paradigm. We will explore the creative ways in which ordinary Venezuelans are not only surviving, but thriving by adopting the principles of decentralized finance. The journey continues. As the line between survival and entrepreneurship blurs in the face of adversity. The journey continues as the line between survival and entrepreneurship blurs in the face of adversity. In the heart of Caracas, a new kind of entrepreneur emerges from the ashes of a shattered economy. They are young, tech-savvy, and driven by necessity rather than ambition. These are the Venezuelans who have turned to Bitcoin as both a lifeline and a means of retaining dignity amidst financial ruin. The year is 2015, and the Venezuelan bolivar has already begun its precipitous fall. With hyperinflation surging, the government desperately attempts to control the narrative by imposing stringent currency restrictions. However, in the shadowy corners of the digital world, Bitcoin provides a beacon of hope. It is here that we meet Javier Garcia, a 28-year-old software developer. Feeling the weight of an empty wallet and a future that seems increasingly bleak, Javier begins to explore the possibilities of digital currencies. Bitcoin's decentralized nature offers a solution that the failing Venezuelan economy cannot. Javier, like many others, is drawn to its promise of autonomy, free from government interference. The technology is complex, but the potential rewards are too significant to ignore. By converting his meager earnings into Bitcoin, Javier manages to shield himself from the worst of the hyperinflation storm. The process is not without its challenges. Internet access in Venezuela is unreliable, and the power grid suffers from frequent outages. Nevertheless, a network of Bitcoin enthusiasts emerges, sharing knowledge, resources, and encouragement. They organize meetups in cafes and private homes, always wary of government surveillance. Stories circulate of others like Javier, who are becoming their own central banks, one transaction at a time. As Bitcoin adoption grows, so does the infrastructure supporting it. By 2016, Bitcoin mining operations sprout across the country, leveraging Venezuela's subsidized electricity. With electricity costs among the lowest in the world, mining becomes a viable, albeit risky venture. It is an ironic twist that a government policy intended to provide affordable energy is now fueling a movement that bypasses state control altogether. In the city of Maracaibo, a young couple, Luis and Camila, decide to invest in a small mining rig. Their decision is born out of necessity rather than ambition. Camila, a former school teacher, watches helplessly as her salary, once enough to support her family, becomes worthless. For Luis, a mechanic by trade, Bitcoin offers a means to keep his family afloat. They purchased their first mining rig in early 2017, using savings scraped together from selling personal belongings. The rig, a modest setup compared to larger operations, sits in a corner of their small apartment, whirring tirelessly. It is a constant presence, a source of hope amidst uncertainty. As they learn the intricacies of cryptocurrency mining, Luis and Camila find themselves part of a growing community. Online forums and chat groups become lifelines, places where advice and encouragement are freely exchanged. These digital spaces provide connection and camaraderie in a country where trust in traditional institutions has eroded. However, success in mining is not guaranteed, and the risks are formidable. Government crackdowns on Bitcoin operations are sporadic but severe, with reports of raids and confiscation of equipment. Yet, for many, the rewards outweigh the risks. Bitcoin offers a chance to escape the crushing grip of hyperinflation, if only temporarily. The year 2018 marks a turning point. Hyperinflation reaches new heights, surpassing 1,000,000%. The bolivar becomes practically worthless, and everyday transactions require bags of cash. In stark contrast, Bitcoin continues to gain traction. By now, a significant portion of everyday transactions among Venezuela's tech-savvy population is conducted in Bitcoin. Among the Bitcoin pioneers is Ana Rodriguez, a single mother of two. For Ana, Bitcoin is more than just a financial tool. It represents a form of resistance. After losing her job at a local newspaper due to budget cuts, Ana turns to freelancing. She writes content for international clients and insists on being paid in Bitcoin. This choice shields her from the chaotic currency fluctuations that plague her country. Ana's story is one of many, reflecting a broader trend. By mid-2018, Bitcoin usage in Venezuela is among the highest in the world. The digital currency is accepted in supermarkets, small businesses, and even by some landlords. Despite government attempts to suppress it, Bitcoin thrives as a grassroots movement that defies centralized control. Yet the journey is fraught with moral and ethical dilemmas. For some, Bitcoin is an opportunity to exploit the misfortune of others, engaging in speculative trading that mirrors the boom and bust cycles of traditional markets. For others, like Javier, Luis, Camila, and Ana, it remains a tool for survival, a way to navigate an otherwise untenable situation. The Venezuelan government's response to this growing trend is predictably heavy-handed. President Nicolás Maduro, in a bid to regain financial control, introduces the Petro, a state-backed cryptocurrency, in early 2018. Billed as a solution to the country's economic woes, the Petro is met with skepticism, both domestically and internationally. Critics argue it is merely a ploy to bypass international sanctions. Despite the fanfare surrounding its launch, the Petro struggles to gain adoption. Technical issues and a lack of transparency undermine confidence in the currency. Instead of curbing Bitcoin's influence, the government's attempts to regulate cryptocurrency only serve to highlight its own inefficiencies. As 2019 unfolds, the landscape continues to evolve. Bitcoin remains a lifeline for many, even as the government intensifies its efforts to control its use. For those who have embraced cryptocurrency, the journey is ongoing, a continuous balancing act between opportunity and risk. And so, the chapter concludes, not with a resolution, but with a lingering question. What does the future hold for a country where innovation is born out of desperation? In the face of adversity, can a decentralized currency offer more than just survival? The next chapter will explore this ongoing struggle as the government clashes with its citizens over control and autonomy in a digital age. The next chapter will explore this ongoing struggle as the government clashes with its citizens over control and autonomy in a digital age. As we turn our focus to the Venezuelan government's reaction to the growing use of Bitcoin, a picture emerges of a state wrestling with unprecedented challenges. Once a nation with the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, Venezuela found itself grappling with the rapid decline of its traditional economic stronghold. The larger question became how a government, so heavily reliant on oil, could navigate a new world where digital currencies offered an escape from its grasp. In 2018, as inflation rates soared beyond 1 million%, the government under Nicolás Maduro took drastic measures to regain control. The introduction of a state-backed cryptocurrency, the Petro, marked a bold, albeit controversial, attempt to re-establish economic authority. The Petro, pegged to the price of oil, was announced with great fanfare as a means to circumvent U.S. sanctions and attract foreign investment. Yet its effectiveness was questioned from the outset. Critics pointed out the lack of transparency and regulation, which only served to deepen mistrust among the Venezuelan people. Carlos, a 34-year-old engineer from Caracas, represents the broader skepticism felt by many. Once a loyal supporter of the government, Carlos had witnessed the steady erosion of his economic stability. He watched as his savings evaporated, leaving him with bolivars that were worth less with each passing day. When the Petro was introduced, Carlos was reluctant to invest, fearing it might be another tool for state manipulation. Instead, he continued to rely on Bitcoin, which offered him a semblance of control and security. The government's crackdowns on cryptocurrency exchanges illustrated their desperation to maintain economic authority. In January 2019, the National Cryptocurrency Agency, SUNACRIP, began enforcing stricter regulations. Exchange platforms were required to register with the government, a move intended to monitor and control crypto transactions. For many Venezuelans, however, this only reinforced their distrust and drove more activities underground. The story of Maria and her family highlights the resilience and resourcefulness of Venezuelan citizens. Maria, a single mother, turned to Bitcoin as a lifeline. She used it to purchase essential goods online, circumventing the inflated costs and shortages within Venezuela. Ironically, it was the very volatility of Bitcoin, often criticized in more stable economies, that offered her a way to preserve value amidst hyperinflation. Maria's story was one of many, illustrating a quiet defiance against governmental control. The international community watched closely as Venezuela's cryptocurrency policies unfolded. Many saw the petro as a desperate gambit, while others viewed it as a potential model for other nations facing similar economic constraints. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's global decentralized network continued to grow, largely unfazed by the regulatory attempts of individual governments. For Venezuelans, the choice between the petro and Bitcoin was not just an economic decision, but a statement of autonomy against a backdrop of political and social upheaval. In the rural town of Mérida, Victor, a schoolteacher, experienced firsthand the dichotomy between traditional and digital economies. Teaching math to young students, he incorporated real-world examples of Bitcoin transactions into his lessons. Victor believed that equipping the next generation with knowledge about cryptocurrencies was essential for their future. His students, though young, understood the potential of a currency not controlled by the government, a lesson taught by their parents' daily struggles. A pivotal moment came when reports emerged of government raids on Bitcoin mining operations. The raids were aimed at seizing equipment and deterring miners who were using subsidized electricity to power their operations. This crackdown created a chilling effect, but it also led to innovative solutions among miners. Many began to operate in secret, using off-the-grid setups to continue their work. This cat-and-mouse game between citizens and the state underscored the lengths to which individuals would go to protect their financial freedoms. The question of legality lingered, as the government oscillated between condemnation and begrudging acceptance of cryptocurrencies. In response, international organizations called for greater transparency and regulation, urging Venezuela to establish clear guidelines that would protect both the state and its citizens. Yet, the allure of a financial system liberated from state control continued to captivate the imagination of many. By late 2019, the petro had failed to gain traction as a viable currency. Despite government mandates requiring its use for certain transactions, it lacked the fluidity and acceptance of Bitcoin within the global marketplace. For Venezuelans like Carlos and Maria, the choice remained clear. They continued to navigate the complexities of a digital economy, seeking stability in an unstable world. The narrative of Venezuela's economic crisis and the adoption of Bitcoin reveals a larger truth about human ingenuity and resilience. It is a testament to the lengths people will go to preserve their dignity and autonomy. As the government struggles to reclaim its grip on the economy, citizens forge new paths through innovation and determination. Their stories are a powerful reminder of the enduring spirit of survival amidst adversity. As we reflect on this chapter, we are drawn to consider the broader implications for nations worldwide. What can be learned from Venezuela's experience? How do governments balance control with the need for innovation? And crucially, how do citizens assert their rights in an increasingly digital world? As these questions unfold, they challenge us to rethink the very nature of money, power, and freedom. In the shadows of the Venezuelan crisis lies a lesson about the fragility and resilience of economic systems. As we delve into the current state of Venezuela's economy and the role of cryptocurrencies today, it becomes clear that this story is far from over. The resilience of the Venezuelan people continues to write itself into history. The next chapter will delve into the present and future of Venezuela's unfolding narrative, as its citizens navigate the complexities of a world in constant flux. The next chapter will delve into the present and future of Venezuela's unfolding narrative, as its citizens navigate the complexities of a world in constant flux. In recent years, the economic crisis has spawned an investigation into the actions, motives, and impacts of those steering the ship. As we peer into the current state of Venezuela, it is crucial to understand not just the numbers and policies, but the human stories that the statistics often obscure. Let's consider a humble town in eastern Venezuela. In Ciudad Bolívar, a place where the Orinoco River winds its ancient course, residents speak in hushed tones about the government's ever-present shadow. It was here, in this historic town, that Maria Fernanda Lopez, a schoolteacher by trade, took her first steps into the world of Bitcoin. Maria, like many others, found herself grappling with the relentless rise of hyperinflation. The bolivar she earned never seemed to stretch far enough to feed her family or purchase essential goods. Her story echoes an oft-repeated refrain throughout Venezuela. In 2016, inflation rates had already soared to hundreds of percent per year. By 2018, this figure had exploded to over 1 million% annually. The government, led by Nicolás Maduro, issued a new banknote, the sovereign bolivar, lopping 5 zeros off its predecessor. Yet this measure was but a small sandbag in the face of a rising economic tide. Maria turned to Bitcoin as a lifeline. With a smartphone in hand, she began to trade, to mine, even as the government imposed new restrictions and regulations. The journey was fraught with challenges. The internet in Venezuela was notoriously slow and unreliable. Maria often found herself walking to a local cafe with a generator to access a stable connection. Across the country, stories like Maria's were growing in number. In Caracas, the capital, university students banded together to form informal collectives, sharing knowledge about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Among them was Alejandro Martinez, a computer science student whose brother had emigrated to Colombia in search of better opportunities. Alejandro saw Bitcoin as more than just an economic tool. It was a symbol of autonomy, a way to assert control over his financial fate. Yet the Venezuelan government, wary of losing grip over its monetary policy, viewed this burgeoning cryptocurrency movement with suspicion. In 2017, President Nicolás Maduro announced the creation of the Petro, a state-backed cryptocurrency supposedly anchored by Venezuela's oil reserves. The Petro was met with skepticism both domestically and internationally, as questions about its legitimacy and backing arose. While the Petro floundered, Bitcoin transactions flourished in the underground economy. Local Bitcoins, a popular peer-to-peer exchange, reported that Venezuelans traded millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin each week. It was a delicate dance with risk, as the government intensified crackdowns on mining operations. In 2018, the National Cryptocurrency Superintendent's Office was founded to regulate the landscape, but their presence often translated into raids and equipment seizures. Maria's cousin, Javier, a cryptocurrency miner, recalled the day his rig was confiscated. "They came in the night," he said, "and left with everything I had built over months." Despite these challenges, Javier rebuilt, driven by necessity and a sense of defiance. The international community kept a watchful eye on Venezuela. Reports from organizations like Human Rights Watch highlighted the social upheaval, the protests that filled the streets of cities like Maracaibo. Families faced with dwindling resources and mounting frustration voiced their dissent, and at the heart of these protests was a cry for accountability. In Washington, D.C., policymakers debated sanctions and foreign aid. Some argued that cryptocurrency could undermine efforts to pressure the Venezuelan government through economic means. Others saw Bitcoin as a beacon of hope, a way for Venezuelans to circumvent oppressive systems. Amidst these debates, the human stories continued to unfold. On a balmy July evening in 2019, Maria sat with her daughter Ana in their modest home. They lit candles as the electricity flickered once more. Maria handed Ana a book, El Principito, one of Ana's favorites. It reminded Maria of simpler times before the economic storm came. Yet, as she looked at Anna's eager eyes, she found resolve. Her ventures into cryptocurrency were as much for Anna as for herself, a future free of desperation. The investigation into Venezuela's economic decline, both formal and informal, points to a myriad of factors. The reliance on oil revenue, the political entanglements of leaders like Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro, and the global economic context all play roles in this complex tapestry. But for Venezuelans like Maria and Javier, the focus remains on survival and adaptation. As 2020 dawned, the COVID-19 pandemic added a new layer of complexity. With borders closed and global markets reeling, the situation in Venezuela became more precarious. Yet ingenuity persisted. In the face of adversity, communities like those in Ciudad Bolívar found strength in unity and resourcefulness. The investigation into Venezuela's present and future is not just about policies or numbers. It's about resilience. It's about the mothers, fathers, and children who navigate crises not just with hope, but with determination. The path ahead remains uncertain, fraught with challenges both internal and external. Yet the spirit of the Venezuelan people is unwavering. As they continue to forge new paths, one thing remains clear. The story is far from over. As we approach the conclusion of this tale, we look ahead to what the future might hold for a nation that continues to redefine its identity amidst turmoil. The next chapter will explore the potential pathways forward for Venezuela, examining not just economic strategies, but the enduring human spirit that drives change even in the face of overwhelming odds. The next chapter will explore the potential pathways forward for Venezuela, examining not just economic strategies, but the enduring human spirit that drives change even in the face of overwhelming odds. At the heart of this story lies a nation rich in resources yet profoundly challenged. Understanding its future means delving into both the persistent struggles and the resilient hopes of its people. Venezuela's economic history is marked by contrasts. With the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, the country was once the jewel of South America. The Orinoco Belt, holding an estimated 300 billion barrels of oil, promised endless prosperity. Under Hugo Chavez, who came to power in 1999, this wealth was meant to foster equality and opportunity. Chavez's early policies saw some success. Social programs flourished and poverty rates initially declined. However, by the time oil prices plummeted in 2014, from over $100 per barrel to under $50, the fragility of the economy was stark. With 95% of the government's budget dependent on oil revenues, the nation found itself in a precarious position. The subsequent hyperinflation was devastating. By 2016, inflation was soaring at hundreds of percent per year. 2 years later, it exceeded 1 million%, rendering the bolivar almost worthless. This economic collapse was not just statistical, it was deeply personal. Families went hungry, medicine became scarce, life became a constant struggle for survival. In the midst of this turmoil, Bitcoin emerged as a beacon of hope. A decentralized currency that lay outside government control offered a possible escape from the chaos. Ordinary Venezuelans began to turn towards this digital refuge, learning to navigate a new financial landscape. The story of José Garcia, a teacher from Caracas, exemplifies this shift. José, once proud of his modest but stable living, found his salary dwindling to insignificance. Desperate to provide for his family, he was introduced to Bitcoin by a friend. Skeptical at first, José quickly learned the ropes of cryptocurrency. By the end of 2017, his digital wallet became not only a means of survival, but a symbol of resilience and innovation. For José and many others, Bitcoin was more than just a currency. It was a form of empowerment. The ability to trade, to save, to engage in an economy beyond the reach of traditional control was invigorating. However, this new financial freedom was not without its challenges. The Venezuelan government, under Nicolás Maduro, who had succeeded Chavez in 2013, was not blind to these changes. The government's response was multifaceted. Initially, it attempted to clamp down on cryptocurrency use, imposing regulations and creating its own alternative, Petro, a state-backed cryptocurrency. Yet, Petro struggled to gain the trust and acceptance that Bitcoin had already secured. The tension between state control and individual autonomy played out on a national stage, a microcosm of broader societal struggles. Amid this backdrop, the resilience of the Venezuelan people shone through. In towns and cities across the nation, informal networks formed, facilitating the exchange of goods and services via Bitcoin. This informal economy represented a collective resistance to the constraints imposed by a failing state system. Maria Fernandez, a nurse from Maracaibo, embodies this grassroots resilience. As hospitals faced shortages and despair, Maria took to organizing medical supply exchanges through Bitcoin groups online. Her efforts not only brought much-needed supplies, but also forged a sense of community and mutual support among her peers. Such stories of adaptation are numerous. They illustrate an unyielding human spirit and the capacity to innovate even under dire circumstances. As we look to the future, we must consider the lessons these individuals teach us about perseverance and hope. Economically, Venezuela stands at a crossroads. Potential pathways forward must reconcile the nation's resource wealth with a need for sustainable governance and diversified economic strategy. The role of cryptocurrency will likely continue to evolve, raising questions about regulation, security, and integration within the global financial system. The international community watches closely, pondering how to best support a nation in crisis. Humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts continue, yet the focus must remain on empowering the Venezuelan people themselves. Each citizen's story, Jose's, Maria's, and countless others, contributes to a tapestry of resilience, a legacy of strength amid adversity. Ultimately, the economic strategies of the future must align with the enduring human spirit that defines Venezuela's legacy. As history has shown, this spirit is unbreakable, even when faced with overwhelming odds. The journey forward will undoubtedly be complex, requiring both external support and internal innovation. In this endeavor, the Venezuelan people will lead the way, driven by their experiences and their dreams for a brighter future. Their story is still unfolding, a testament to courage and creativity in the face of hardship. As we conclude this chapter on legacy, we prepare to delve deeper into the economic strategies that may guide Venezuela toward a more stable and prosperous future. The journey continues, and with it, the hope that a new dawn awaits. With these thoughts, we transition to the next chapter, where we will explore the stories of those who challenge the status quo and seek to redefine the future. In the quiet corners of Venezuela tonight, someone is counting Satoshis rather than Bolivars. They do not view this as an act of rebellion or revolution. It is simply survival, a means to an end, a lifeline forged in the digital ether. In the grand narrative of human history, money has often been more than a medium of exchange. It's a representation of trust, a shared belief in the value of symbols and paper. When that trust erodes, when symbols lose their meaning, as they have in Venezuela, human ingenuity finds a way. Bitcoin, for some, became that way. A currency not tied to flags or speakers at a podium, but one that offers a semblance of stability in a world of chaos. The story of Venezuela is a poignant reminder of how fragile the constructs we rely on can be. The oil that once promised prosperity, the policies that seemed to secure the future, all proved ephemeral. Yet amid the rubble of an economy, the spark of human resilience shines brightly. Ordinary citizens became their own central banks, their own saviors. This tale speaks to our deepest instincts to adapt and endure. It highlights how technology, while often misunderstood, can become a beacon of hope. In the shadows of hyperinflation, where the past and future of money collide, a lesson emerges. The tools of tomorrow, like Bitcoin, might just be a necessity today. As you drift into the calm of sleep, remember this quiet truth. In all its forms, value finds a way to persist. In a world where change is the only constant, may your dreams be filled with the resilience of those who adapt. Tonight, let your mind rest, knowing there is always a way forward. Good night. End of script, EP53.